can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am a registered psychologist and I am the owner and founder of Therapy Alberta. So we are an online therapy practice serving folks all over Alberta, growing to include psychologists, social workers, certified Canadian counselors, and yeah, just looking to improve individual and community mental health in Alberta.
Wonderful. So you're online then. That's
Yeah.
fantastic. Yeah. Then you can reach people all over the place.
Yes, that's been a huge part of our mission. I
Fantastic.
used to do in-person work and switched during COVID. And at first I wasn't a big fan. I do somatic body therapy, and so working a lot with the body and emotions, and thought I had to be in the room with people. And the beginning of COVID, I was not happy about the transition to online. And then it ended up being amazing, building relationships with people all across Alberta, serving people who would have never reached out for therapy if it hadn't been virtual, and realizing that, yeah, I could still do the work online. And really, for a lot of people, it's better being in their own spaces, not having to commute, not having to be in a waiting room, not having to drive home afterwards. There's just a lot of convenience and privacy to it. And
Mhm.
I ended up loving it so much that I'm going to stay virtual forever.
Oh, wow. That's wonderful. And you have other people on your team, so social workers, etc., that you mentioned. Hmm.
Yes, I've expanded. I have a few virtual administrative and marketing assistants, and
Hmm.
then I have a couple psychologists, and yeah, looking to expand to include more therapists.
Excellent. That's wonderful. And can I ask you, Carol, what's one achievement that you're extremely proud of, that you're very proud of?
I think doing Therapy Alberta to make it a business, expanding beyond that solopreneurship where it was just me for a while, right? I started it with the intention of growing, but I wasn't trained as a business person. I was trained as a therapist, and so being able to expand into this realm and have success, grow, and to bring people onto the team and see that working. And so yeah, that was a huge accomplishment.
Yeah, it sounds it's one thing when you're trained in your profession, and then as a salesperson or as a marketing, that kind of stuff comes into it, and it can be very, very difficult, but that's a fantastic achievement, and so happy you're reaching so many people out there. Yeah.
Mhm. Thank you.
Um, if you had one piece of advice that you could offer others, you know, uh, who would like to follow in your path, um, and provide the services that you do on such a large scale, what piece of advice would that be?
I would say it's two part. It's finding balance
Mhm.
and not doing it alone. So finding balance both between your business and your personal life, right? So a lot of entrepreneurs are working way more hours on their business than are healthy for them.
Mhm.
I've been there too, right? Finding myself on my laptop on evenings and weekends when I could be with my family instead. And so part of it is finding that balance for yourself, and then also finding balance with other people, people who encourage you when you're struggling, people who balance out your weaknesses and who balance out your strengths. And so, yeah, it's really about finding a balance that's good for you individually, and then finding that community that helps to balance you as well.
So important, balancing. Yeah. Yeah, I know a lot of solopreneurs, entrepreneurs, they're stuck in their computer. They're working kind of on their business, not in their business as much as they want to. So that's fantastic. Thank you. And what really kept you driven, kept you motivated during those hard times, the parts of your entrepreneurship?
What keeps me motivated still is helping people.
Yeah.
It's all about the people that I've worked with, the people that I hear benefiting from therapy. There is so much need in our world right now for support, for care, for attention, and for that high quality care. And so, yeah, it's really about being able to provide that affirming care to people who otherwise couldn't access it. Folks who are living in a rural community and there's only one therapist available in their community, or somebody who can't find affirming care. If they're a person of color, if they're part of the LGBTQ community, being able to provide care for somebody that doesn't live in the same area as you. And so it's really about just being able to provide support and care for people.
Yeah, and compassion and everything that you do. Fantastic. And I know you've grown your business. You've included more practitioners. You mentioned you wanted to bring on more practitioners. But how else would you like to see the business grow? Like, uh, what does that look like for you?
Mm-hmm. I would love to see not just adding more therapists, but also partnerships. Part of one of the downsides of virtual therapy is that there are people who don't have access to it, people who don't have stable internet and computers at home, or who don't have a safe place where they can access it. And I'd like to see that change. I'd like to see a room in a library where anybody could go have virtual therapy with somebody who fits for them, not just what's being offered at a shelter, what's being offered in their programs or services, but really, again, that high quality care with a person who really fits you, because therapy is all about the relationship. If it isn't a safe, trusting relationship, it's not helpful. I'd like to see that even in seniors' homes, to be able to have a virtual platform where either the seniors could go to a room where they could talk to a therapist, or where a cart on with a laptop could be brought into their room. So really, it's about that accessibility, providing accessibility for Albertans who otherwise wouldn't have access to that high quality therapy. And I think that that's, another thing that drives me is just growing enough that I can begin to offer some of those partnerships and services.
That's wonderful. And like you said, that relationship between therapist and patient or client is so important.
Mhm.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. So, is there a message you'd like to share with other women entrepreneurs just to help them keep going, to inspire them? Any message, anything you'd like to say?
Mm-hmm. Again, about that community piece,
Yeah.
knowing that there are barriers, there are systemic barriers, there are social barriers, there are financial barriers, even kind of personal, right? We're often the child caretakers, growing until our children are 18 or whatnot. And so just knowing that you can overcome those and you don't have to do it alone, that you have a community, whether it is your own personal and social community, whether it is regional, the services that are offered in your area, or whether it's online, like through the Canadian Women's Chamber of Commerce, right? Finding those resources and knowing that you can do it and you don't have to do it alone, that there are supports.
And so, is that why you joined the Canadian Women's Chamber of Commerce?
Absolutely. Part
Yeah.
of it was an inspiration too. Somebody told me about you guys, and I went to the website, and even just the very first line that I read was affirming. It was for women and non-binary people. And I was like, wow, that's new, because working in a field where there is so much binary, there's things for women and there's things for men. And it's really hard to kind of open that up. And so even just seeing that, I was like, wow, okay. And then reading through it, it was that affirming care, it was empowering, and it was offering that community.
Okay. That's fantastic. Yeah, I think that's very important. Very important to include everyone. So and you mentioned, I think you mentioned your area of expertise, but could you just, maybe recap that or reach out and tell us more about that?
Mm-hmm. And so my personal area of expertise when I'm working with clients is with trauma and dissociation. And
Mm,
so this is folks who've experienced traumas throughout their lives, oftentimes in childhood. And the coping mechanism is dissociation. And that's just simply a division or severing from that pain and that trauma so that you can continue to cope. And it's for me, it's a relational process. A lot of harm happens relationally, and so a lot of healing needs to happen relationally too. And Therapy Alberta is not focused specifically on trauma and dissociation, but it is focused on that relational healing. It's about providing that care and that change through a healthy relationship where people are safe to be vulnerable, to try new things, and to, work through some of those things that are holding them back and to be able to move forward with more freedom.
Okay. So people who have had trauma in their lives, maybe uh, I don't know if they reach out to you or if their family members do.
Mhm. Oftentimes, it's the people reaching out themselves.
Okay.
Occasionally, parents will reach out for care with minors. Sometimes partners will reach out.
Mhm.
Um, at this kind of stage of therapy, where it is kind of that more in-depth, individualized, sometimes longer-term work, it really needs to come from the person themselves. If they're there because their partner told them to go to therapy or their mother told them to go to therapy, they're not going to have that same kind of change, but it can still be a safe space where we can acknowledge that, where we can bring up this idea of what brings you here and how are you still showing up and what's it like to have somebody else involved in this. But yeah, there's a lot of folks who reach out themselves, especially during the pandemic. I think it really just showed people what they were struggling with, right? When we have new challenges in the world and it brings up these struggles that sometimes we used to be able to work around
Mhm.
or suppress or ignore, sometimes they just become kind of too much in the way. And so oftentimes that is what brings people to reach out.
Yeah, wonderful. Okay. Can I ask you one more question? Just one last
Oh,
question. And we talked about your goals and what you'd like to see in terms of your business growing and, making it more accessible for people with certain issues, financial issues, etc. But what would your greatest hope be?
my greatest hope
Yes.
would be that people would be able to have the care that they need. Really, whether it is with a therapist or whether it is with education, right? Part of our mission is even just providing education for people, not just connecting them to our services, but other services, crisis services, distress services, free therapy services. So finding that care through education, through information, right? Being able to learn more about what they're struggling with or find ways, and building healthier relationships in their own lives. But it's really all about people being able to find the care that they need.
Beautiful. Beautiful, Carol. Thank you so much for taking the time out today to speak with us.